I left my heart in San Francisco. More like I left my wallet in San Francisco, right, guys? Hello, Nate Rankin, books you haven't read. Don't you like my Steph Curry bobblehead? I went to San Francisco recently. I'm going to put Steph up there for the remainder of the video. And I visited a lot of their bookstores. I had reason to be up there. My family was doing some family vacation time up in Northern California, and so on the way back to where I live in Long Beach, I wanted to stop in San Francisco, go to a Giants game, get a Steph Curry bobblehead, and also raid their bookstores. Here's a quick preview of what all that looks like. And I want to talk about the books that I got, which will be a little bit of a preview of what I'm reading, also a little bit of a preview of what's going to be on my shelf for the next several years, but also give my thoughts on kind of the relative strengths of the different bookstores that I went to. So we're going to start off, we're actually going to start off in Berkeley with maybe the most famous bookstore, Moe's Bookstore. This is I don't know if you can really see the writing on there, it's pretty tiny, but there are I cannot, well, you can kind of see there, 4 floors of books. New and used, it's definitely much more of a used book mecca. The only thing I can say that I was disappointed about was not being able to get into the rare book annex. It's only open on Wednesdays, according to the sign on the front of it. But there was a lot of good stuff, and I probably should have spent another hour in there. There were many, many books that maybe I kind of regret not getting. But let's get kind of started off into it. This was one of the books that I was most on the lookout for as I was going in, and was pleased to find it at the first shop that I went to. Minor Detail by Adanya Shibli. Adanya Shibli you'll notice a theme. I got a lot of Palestinian and Middle Eastern literature. Shibli, I read her book, Touch, at the beginning of the year. That was the first book that I read, and that was just incredible. That's one of the best books I've read this year, maybe one of the best books I've read in my life. So I'm very excited to... I've seen this get a lot of praise. I think it might have been either Mark Nash or like Book Pogo, I think are the people I've seen on YouTube talking about it, but I've heard nothing but good things, so I'm really interested in picking that up. Next up, this is kind of these next 2 books are kind of a theme. So Nicholas Mosley, probably most known for Impossible Object. They did not have Impossible Object at Moe's, but they did have Tunnel of Babel, which is described as, again, gotta make sure it's focused, as a sequel to his novel God's Hazard, as well as follow-up to his classic Experience in Religion. So it's a bit of a kind of fiction, non-fiction fusion. I don't think that it's quite necessary to go back and read those other 2. But yeah, this will be... Nicholas Mosley, an author, obviously, that's been on my list for a while, a Dalkey Archive guy. Moe's has a great, there's a lot of Dalkey Archive, like used Dalkey Archive stuff there. And that's one of the, that's one of the big criteria of judgment that I have for used bookstores is how much obscure Dalkey Archive stuff do they have? So there was a lot of, again, more Dalkey Archive stuff that I had to put down than I got to keep. The reason I say why that was kind of a theme, here's another book that's like the second in a series. Again, going back to the Middle East theme, Ilyas Khoury, I believe is how you pronounce his name, is actually a Lebanese writer, was a Lebanese writer. I believe he died at the age of 76 last September. I don't think it was related to the war specifically, but obviously, Israel bombing Lebanon might have had an effect on that. I don't know, man. Honestly, I don't know. They said it was just failing health, but I was on the lookout for a number of different Khoury books, and I didn't necessarily find the ones I wanted. So when I was in Moe's, I was like, well, this is Moe's. This is like the best one. This may be the only place I see a Corey book. And I got it in my head somehow that this was the first of the series, but in fact, My Name is Adam is the first one in the series. I don't believe the third one has been translated, so not that much of a loss. And I kind of wonder if you can just read this first without needing to read, if you can read them out of order. Who knows? Okay, Roberto Bolaños By Night in Chile. I actually have 2666 already, and you know, that's a very long book. It's very intimidating. So I wanted to get something that was a little shorter and a little less intimidating to finally get me into Bolaño. One of the more embarrassing things is I've never read a Roberto Bolaño book, but everyone kind of either assumes I have or assumes that I would love it, and I, don't doubt them. This, I can remember, if any BookTube OGs remember Dean Goronitis. I think he was the first one that ever mentioned this on BookTube. It's about a priest. There's Opus Dei stuff. It's like a deathbed confession. There's like Opus Dei conspiracies. There's Augusto Pinochet era Chile, poetry, literature, and it's all done in like 100 pages. So hopefully that'll be a fun way to break the ice for Bolaño. Dolly City by Orly Castle Bloom. Excuse me. A couple too many L's in that name. Again, going back to the Middle East, this time an Israeli writer, part of the Hebrew literature series. This kind of gave me, when I was reading the description about how a surgeon finds a child in like a black plastic bag, and then takes them home to ceaselessly do like surgery and cutting and sewing them together. It gave me a little bit of Geek Love, Catherine Dunn vibes. But I don't know, the notion of a sort of crazed like Jewish mother sewing and cutting and doing surgery on her child seemed like a very good, I don't know, metaphor for Israeli society right now. And so this is a book, again, another kind of used, I don't know if it's obscure Dalkey Archive, but it's probably not the first thing you think of Dalkey Archive. Probably not the first thing you think of about Dalkey Archive when you see it. Another kind of experimental book, Judith Shalansky, An Inventory of Losses. This book includes like 12 different sort of chapters about just things that are lost, and they're not all even things, like, one of them's the Caspian Tiger. Another chapter is about like the love poems of Sappho. There's another that's like a Roman like palazzo or villa or something. So it's one of these things. It's like a book that's about 12 disparate things, but they're all like lost to history, and then there's recurrent themes kind of running throughout. This is also, I gotta say, New Directions. I've got a couple of different New Directions paperbacks. I really like the quality of their paperbacks, especially when they have these little flaps on them. So yeah, excited to read that. From Moe's, this was probably the book that I was most excited to pick up. Aside from Minor Detail by Adanya Shibli, this is the collected poetry of Adonis. And Drake, I assume most people watching this know who Drake is. He goes by Orpheus here on YouTube. He's been talking this up both recently and I think like just in years past. He's probably got plenty of stuff to say on Adonis. This guy is considered to be, I think they name check, yeah, you can kind of see right there, the T.S. Eliot of like the Arabic poetry world. And I have known about Adonis for a while, but I've just never had necessarily enough of an impetus to either buy a book or even read more than one or two poems online by him. He's always like a name that I would see on like Ladbrokes, or Ladbrokes, I believe is how it's pronounced. The betting odds for the Nobel Prize winners. He's old enough now that he's probably too old to win it. Usually they don't give it to guys in their 90s or women in their 90s. They usually don't give it to women at all. But yeah, this is just a great book that spans his whole career. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of poetry by what many consider to be one of the greatest living poets. So that was Moe's. Very much stands up to its reputation. Highly recommend. Beautiful, beautiful place. Okay, the next one is, here we go, City Lights Bookstore. You can kind of see the logo down there. So City Lights Bookstore is more of a more new books than used books. Independent bookstore. And one of the books that I got there was Palace of the Peacock by Wilson Harris. Wilson Harris is a Guyanese writer. And this is kind of considered a mini modernist masterpiece of Guyana. The other one, of course, that I'm on the lookout for always is his Carnival trilogy. But this is, I kind of like this kind of says it all. I dreamt I awoke with one dead seeing eye and one living closed eye. Considered dreamlike, hallucinatory. Very excited to kind of dig into this at the moment that I can. Continuing on with my adventure in Palestinian literature, a lot of what I'm curious to read Palestinian literature-wise is stuff that's like coming out now or within the past couple years, and I do want to do a video on some of that stuff, including the Adanya Shibli stuff, including The Coin by Yasmin Zaher, and then another, hopefully I want to read this soon. This is Sandcatcher by Omar Khalifa. This is a book about a group of Palestinian journalists that are trying to track down and interview the one of the last living, obviously just Palestinian history. So this was, it was published 2024. LitHub. I think this is literally where I found out about this book, was LitHub's most anticipated books of 2024. So very excited and interested in that. Speaking of books that Drake or Orpheus has been plugging recently, Chronicles of a Village by Nguyen Thanh Hien. That wasn't too butchered, I hope. Translated by, Kuyen Nguyen Huang. Not going to try and say that again, but I did my best. This is some really beautiful, beautiful writing. Obviously it's translated, but this is some Vietnamese author. I believe this is Yale. This is Yale Press, right? Yeah. So same with the Adonis poetry collection. Yale University Press, getting us some non-Anglosphere books. And so, Drake's been a huge proponent of this book. I was excited for it to catch my eye and to pick it up. It was a definite. Once I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm snatching this one up. And then finally, this was a local book. Rebecca Solnit, she wrote Paradise Built in Hell, which, if you don't know what it is, it's a great book. Go Google it, look it up. The first chapter in that book deals with the San Francisco earthquake and fire of the early 1900s. And so I think she's a local. I'm not entirely sure. She certainly, the subject matter that she takes up would seem to be that she's a local of San Francisco, or certainly has, let's call it, San Francisco politics, which I am a big fan of. And this is like a city atlas of a lot of the different sides of San Francisco. So we've got green women, open spaces, and their champions. So it's like women who have, you see the kind of women's profiles and then all the different green spaces that they've helped preserve. There's one in here. Is this the one? Yeah, Right Wing of the Dove. This is the military industrial complex in San Francisco. So it's looking at all the different sides of San Francisco, kind of good and bad. And I just wanted, this was down in the basement level of City Lights books. The basement level's got some great politics books. If you're interested, I think in politics particular, this was the best selection. Politics-wise, again, mostly new books. The fiction was also really good, but it was arranged in a way where like it was separated by like Americans over here, and then Europeans are over here, and then Asians over here, Latin Americans over here. So that kind of tripped me up at first. But overall, really good selection. Not just like big press, but as you can see, a lot of what I'm getting is small press books. So there was a very good mix of like new stuff that's from small presses. So yeah, really excited to kind of dig into this and get to know San Francisco on a more intimate and complicated level. Okay, so this next one, only one book from the Russian, I think it's the Russian Hill Bookstore. There's a really steep hill. I actually walked directly from City Lights Books to the Russian Hill Bookstore. Did not realize how steep of a hike that would be, but it was fine. And it was very much worth it because look at this. Found a Russian or Soviet, he might have been Georgian, I'm not quite sure, but a Soviet writer that I've been interested in a lot, but have not gotten an actual physical book of his. This is the poet Vladimir Mayakovsky. He's kind of famous for, in many ways, being like kind of a Soviet propagandist poet, but also one who, with the death of Lenin, became very disillusioned to the communist project. But yeah, like a committed communist revolutionary, you know, with all the kind of optimism that optimism and the perilous nature of that venture. But yeah, I'm and then of course his last poem in here is like I think dedicated. I think it's just called Vladimir Lenin. And it's a poem kind of dedicated to him. So I'm interested in how propaganda and poetry really intersected in this individual, in this guy. Looking forward to it. Let's see, what was next? Yeah. Okay, these next three stacks... Okay, these next three stacks were all in the Haight-Ashbury district, and they were all on the same street. I can't remember the name of the street, but I'll start with this. A classic, A Canticle for Leibovitz. This was from Borderlands Books, and Borderlands Books is a sci-fi bookstore. And, you know, no hate or shame on sci-fi books, but it wasn't necessarily the bookstore that was going to have a lot of what I was looking for. It did have some kind of literary fiction that's like obviously a blend between genre and sci-fi. I'm not, at this point in my life, super into sci-fi, but there was a back room that had a lot of kind of classic and older and in much better shape than this, I should say. Sci-fi books. So if you're kind of a classic sci-fi, you like the old mass market paperbacks, you'll probably find something that you want at this bookstore. There's also some kind of classic or some kind of collectible stuff. There was a lot of like collectible, really nice Lord of the Rings publications, or editions, I should say, as well as some stuff that was in a glass case behind the main counter. But yeah, got Canticle for Leibovitz. This is one of these books that, like, every year I'm like, damn, I still didn't read A Canticle for Leibovitz. I really, really should read that. It's kind of perpetually on the top of my to-read list. So now that I actually have a physical copy of my own, I'm hoping that'll push me along to do it a bit quicker. And then I went to another, this was, what was it called? Like Bound Collective? This is the Anarchist, sorry, that's the wrong bookmark. I don't have a bookmark with this, but there's an Anarchist book collective that runs, I think it's called Bound Together is what it's called. And it's run by an Anarchist book collective since, I think, the 80s. Or maybe even the late 70s. I think their location has been there since the 80s. And this is another this is probably the second best like political selection that I saw in San Francisco. But you also notice the first two books are fiction. Like the it was interesting for it's a pretty small space. It's like a big room, but it's a one-room bookstore. And again, the best stuff that they have is probably political in nature. They also I think they started like the Prisoners, what was it? The Prisoners Letters Project? The Prisoners Library Project. So you can like donate books and volunteer to get involved with that. But yeah, Nicholson Baker, The Mezzanine. This is, I mean, I've only ever heard not just good, but like brilliant things about this book. I've got a couple other Nicholson Baker books. When you find them, they're usually pretty cheap to be had. But this one's so popular, I feel like it's a bit hard to find in used bookstores. Not that it's hard to find online, but the joy of finding it on the shelves. Just kind of, it's kind of the whole experience, right? So yeah, this will be hopefully something that I read fairly soon, within the next couple months or year. Another, again, returning to my theme of Palestinian literature, this is Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad. I believe Isabella Hamad is like British Palestinian, because she wrote this in, I think it was written originally in English or probably simultaneously if she, anyway, there's no translator for this. This is about a British woman who is reeling from a love affair and goes back to Haifa in the West Bank, and she plays Gertrude in a production of Hamlet. And so Hamlet, Palestine, that's kind of my fucking shit, dude. I'm absolutely going to be into that. So I was really pleased to find this book there. Again, great political stuff there, which is my next book. Oh my god, I totally forgot about one of the books. Okay, well, I'll have to circle back to it, because it's right over here. So, Murray Bookchin is a leftist anarchist. I don't know exactly what you would consider him, but he's one of the sort of main proponents for democratic confederalism, which... This is another book that I found at Moe's. This was one of the more kind of surprising books that I found. I've been on the lookout for like stuff by Abdullah Öcalan. I believe that's how you say his name. The Turkish, or I should say Kurdish, sort of the Kurdish freedom fighter. He's considered like the Kurdish Nelson Mandela, essentially. He's been imprisoned in Turkey for a long, long time. I believe that the Kurds and the Turks are actually like... He recently like put out a thing like saying, okay, hey, we're gonna stop like the insurgency against Turkey. Now is like a time for peace. But he's been kind of the figurehead from jail of a lot of the Kurdish democratic freedom movement. And so Bookchin's sort of a lot of the theoretical underpinning of what they're doing in Kurdistan. And this book is, it was written by some Germans, by some German activists, and so this is the translation of it. And it's a discussion of how they're trying to do, like, my understanding of it is that basically the decisions are made from sort of neighborhood councils. And so it's trying to build that form of democracy up in Kurdistan. I think both in like the Syrian parts and the Turkish parts. Kurdistan also, and I don't know how they're doing in Iraq. Honestly, I think this will probably be mostly Turkey because that's where North Kurdistan is. But I know that like if you're a fan of the True Anon podcast, Brace Belden went over to basically help the PKK, which is the political organization that this is all spawning from. And he fought against ISIS famously. But he also got to observe a bit of the sort of democratic experiments that they were having. So that's where the Murray Bookchin is. This is kind of there's a number of different Murray Bookchin books that I was considering. This just felt like kind of the most complete. It's called The Ecology of Freedom. I don't know if I actually said that. Yeah, those are two political things that, again, I'm very interested in, very excited to read. Okay, and then the final one in the Haight-Ashbury district. This is called Endling by Maria Riva. This is a Ukrainian writer, and I got this for a very specific reason because it's about. It takes place during, Ukraine 2022, so Russian invasion is going to happen. And it centers around a woman who's in the, romance, tourism, wife industry. The industry that caters to passport bros that are going to Ukraine looking for supplicant Eastern European wives that they think are going to be more traditional. She's sort of doing that as a cover and kind of scamming a lot of these guys so that she can, I think, try and find her mother, but also concurrently she's trying to save, I think she's a scientist and she's trying to save a bunch of rare snails. And the thing about Ukraine and rare snails is that I have a cousin who I was actually seeing and hanging out with the week earlier, who's done extensive research on rare snails in Ukraine. So it was a very personal thing of, oh, I have kind of familial experience with this. I gotta pick this up. And then what was funny was I sent him a picture of some of the species discussed in this book, and he's like, yeah, those are all made up. Which he was kind of pissed when I showed him that. He's like, there's so many rare snails that are in Ukraine. They could have used those real ones, but I suspect they're using made up ones because these are supposed to either be last of their kind, or they will be last of their kind. They might be because it's the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Some shit might get blown up, is what I'm guessing. Anyway, so I'm really interested in this. This is a new book. This was from Booksmith, another good independent bookstore. Mostly new stuff. There's a little bit of used stuff in there. But if you went to, the Booksmith Bound Collective, or I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of it, but the Anarchist run bookstore, and then Borderlands, those are all within very, very close, blocks of each other. Two of them are right across the street from each other. So that in itself could be a good book trip. Okay, getting to the final three. This was at, Green Apple Books. And there are two different Green Apple books. This one was what I think is the bigger one. But they're both within a couple miles or blocks of each other. So this was a mix of both new and used. Green Apple has a really good almost even mix between sort of new and used. Their first floor is all new stuff. Their second floor used stuff. Again, another really solid independent bookstore with. I thought that they were the best at kind of their staff picks and their staff recommendations. They had the most little detailed. You know how bookstores will have those detailed handwritten note cards about what they like? Anyway, I thought that was kind of what stood out about Green Apple. This is Little Lazarus by Michael Bible. I think Michael Bible has a book coming out with Dalkey Archive. This is from Clash Books, but I've been reading up on him, and he seems like a really interesting kind of up-and-coming writer. And so that was, again, this was one of the books that was a staff pick, and obviously I'd known the name before, but their recommendation had kind of put it over the top. I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. This is kind of a book about internet stalking and obsession. A woman is stalking, I think, the other woman that's with her boyfriend, and it becomes kind of a tale of contemporary internet obsession. And I was very taken, obviously, by the beautiful green cover. I love a green cover, but also just by the first couple chapters, first couple sections. And then finally, continuing with my theme, is Ellipsis by Fadi Judah. This is a book of poetry put out by Milkweed Editions, so shout out to another small independent publisher. I do try when I buy new books to mostly just buy independent publishers. I think they're typically, honestly, some of the ones that are putting out the best stuff. This is like really contemporary poetry. I'm not sure, forgive my ignorance, I'm not sure if Fadi Judah is actually living in Palestine or the West Bank these days, but this was put out. I'm sure the book will actually tell us. Is Fadi Judah the one that's a doctor? I think he might be. Book longs. Yeah, he lives in Houston with his wife and kids, where he practices internal medicine. So, a poet that's a doctor. Many such cases. This will be this might also be part of my Palestinian literature sort of roundup that I do in the coming months. So do stay tuned for that. Interested to dig into it. Okay. And the last two stacks, they both come from bookstores in San Jose. There are two different like recycle sort of new and used bookstores. They're just called like the Recycle Used Bookstore. And this one came from like the one that's west, and then this one, they're only like 5 or 6 miles away from each other, which is a little funny. And then this one was from the main sort of bigger one. But let's talk about this one first. This is Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood. Longtime viewers of the channel will remember that I reviewed her novel, No One Is Talking About This. That is one of my favorite novels published in the last 5 years. I'm a big fan of it. It's both full of humor and pathos in equal measure. Patricia Lockwood's hilarious, and I've just been following her since, I don't know, the early days of Twitter. She was just one of the first very funny Twitter accounts that I feel like I followed. And she turns out to be a really good writer. This is a memoir of hers. And she's, very liberal, left-leaning, artsy-fartsy writer kid, and then she's got a dad that literally became a priest after he got married, which you're allowed to do, apparently now in the Catholic Church. And so this is a memoir kind of about the odd circumstances of her life, I guess. And she's a very funny writer. I don't read a lot of memoirs, but I am definitely all in on Patricia Lockwood's memoir. And then I was really excited to find this edition, particularly of the Red Cavalry stories. I mean, this is like not just by Isaac Babel. It's not just like the stories. It's also like the last 100 pages of it are like Babel's actually diary from his 1920 diary, because he was in like the Red Army during the Russian Civil War, and so I'm really, really interested. I'm as you can tell probably by my Mayakovsky book, I'm kind of perpetually interested in Soviet history, and this is kind of one of the hallmarks of Soviet literature, both as like fictional stories and also just as a non-fictional account. And so, final stack. The main Recycle used book had a little bit of new stuff, and they had a couple shelves where there were like some NYRB stuff, some Dalkey Archive, that's what this is, as well as some other small publishers. I think Deep Vellum was there. So I would definitely say like the main, the bigger store is the better one, as you might expect. But this is American Abductions by Mauro Javier Cardenas. And it is, American Abductions. It's about Colombian immigrants that get snatched up mysteriously out of the blue by the American Gestapo, let's say. And this was written like a year ago, or this was published a year ago, so it's incredibly timely. It's actually compared with Philip K. Dick and Samuel Delany. So I'm interested to see what the sort of, sci-fi, bleak, futuristic elements of it are. But this has been high up on my list because of its topicality, so I was really pleased to find that. I think this was the only bookstore. Like, there were a number of like new bookstores with new Dalkey Archive stuff. This was the only one that had this book, because I was definitely on the lookout for it. Then also, I got a copy of V for Vendetta, finally. This is one of these books that, like, okay, so I'm not a huge, like, graphic novel fan, but every now and then, I'll pick one up and read through it. Last year I read, like, The Killing Joke, which I think is also an Alan Moore, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm not like a huge comic book guy, either like books or movies. But I was a huge fan of, I'm still a fan of the V for Vendetta movie. It's a great rewatch. It's, got its flaws like any comic book movie, but it's mostly enjoyable. And so I just wanted to get, you can see right there is $10. And that's about as cheap as I've ever seen for, a book in this condition. That's about as cheap as I've ever seen the book. So I know that the book is it's pretty unique and different from the actual movie. And so I am very interested in kind of doing a read of that and then probably a rewatch of the movie as well. And then these final two books, I was incredibly pleased to find both of these at the same store. This is, here we go, The Early History of Rome, History of Early Rome by Livy. This is, his first 5 books. And Livy, famously, I can't forget what percentage of his work is lost to history, but a significant portion of his History of Rome is completely lost. And so this is all of the early stuff. My story about Livy, I've told this elsewhere. I don't think I've told it on this channel. I got really into Livy and a lot of like Roman history in my grad school days. And I was reading, because a lot of what I wanted to do with my thesis, and a lot of what I did do, was comparisons between ancient Rome and contemporary America, but through a fictional lens. So I was reading a lot of, leafing through a lot of stuff like Livy and Tacitus. And during one of my classes, during the years that I was at Chapman, I'm not quite sure, but I'm not quite sure why, but for whatever reason, Werner Herzog was like some kind of professor or fellow bullshit type of job. And he was mostly there for like the film school, but one of my writing teachers was at least on friendly terms with him and was like, "Hey, would you mind coming to my short story writing class, basically, and talking to my students?" And he said yes. And so it became we had one class where it was just Werner Herzog asking us, what are you reading? What are you writing? What are your kind of ambitions? And so Werner Herzog and I talked about Livy for about 5 to 10 minutes. And so that's kind of my interesting Livy story. I really like reading, especially the early stuff that's a little more kind of mythological and uncertain. So that's just a book I'll enjoy flipping through, I think probably for the rest of my life. And that's an Easton Press hardcover, leatherbound. Finally, the collected poetry of Robinson Jeffers. This is volume 1. They didn't have volume 2, but I'm a big fan of this book. I've checked out both this and volume 2 from my local library many times, and I always end up, kind of rechecking it out the maximum amount of times. So I finally decided it's time for me to get my own copy of this book. There he is, handsome fella. I can't say enough good things about Robinson Jeffers and how much I enjoy reading his poetry. I think, again, this is another like Drake-inspired, Orpheus-inspired book. Years ago, he talked about like this exact collection of stuff, and that's what initially turned me on to it, as well as I think Robinson Jeffers was quoted in a different nonfiction book I was reading at the time, and so it was very kind of serendipitous that those two were talking about it at the same time. So this is, I think, like Jeffers, I think there are total 4 in each of these. This is 500 pages. I feel like I feel like the second one is almost 700 pages. Anyway, some more poetry that I'm very pleased to have found. I was a little shocked that these are like not easy to find, these actual copies, and so I was very pleased to see that the Recycle Books in San Jose actually had it. So yeah, that is my epic book haul. I was a big fan of almost every like bookstore. Again, maybe Borderlands is the only one that's not like really for me, but everything else was pretty solid, pretty superb. San Francisco, I do probably have to give you top status in terms of bookstore town. I'm sorry, Chicago. To be fair, I did not go to all of the bookstores that I wanted to in Chicago last year, so I do still have some work to catch up on this. Also, very important caveat, I have not been to New York, so I'm sure New York probably puts both of these, both of those cities to rest. Certainly, they all put Los Angeles to rest, but yeah, had a lot of fun just digging through San Francisco's bookstores, and hopefully I'll be back soon.